Resident Evil Village sees the player controlling Ethan Winters once more, having survived the events of Biohazard, which has since been ranked the scariest title in the franchise. Village is set 3 years later, which is full of surprises, plot twists, and a perfectly executed survival horror and action gameplay mix. We see the return of one of the franchise's most iconic characters, and the introduction of some truly unforgettable enemies. The game is puzzle-driven at times, which is masterfully intertwined with many high-tension moments and emotional narrative. Whilst there are most certainly aspects of Village which could be improved, it is still able to deliver on many levels.
Come inside, Ethan.
The beginning of the game gets off to a chilling start, seeing Chris Redfield murder Mia, who then proceeds to kidnap his daughter Rose. Despite Chris saving the pair at the end of Biohazard, there are clearly plenty of questions which need answering. After being pulled from his home, Ethan awakes outside of an overturned vehicle, in the snow during darkness, in an unknown area, and proceeds to make his way towards the central hub of the game, which is of course the village. It is here where the search for Rose begins, where the father figure of the Winters family is quickly greeted by the first of many enemy types. Lycans are the most common enemy, who can move quickly, jump and even dodge attacks. They also like to bite, but just like zombies, they can sometimes travel in packs. In this instance your best course of action is to run. There are also armoured versions of the Lycan, which can deal more dangerous strikes. Landmines, pipe bombs or well-placed shots can put them to rest. Whereas the larger enemies you encounter later in the campaign will have you looking for somewhere to hide, or depending on your difficulty, deploying your most powerful weapons. Inside the castle, all enemies you face are female as men have been harvested for their blood. Whether they are winged or armed with a sword, each are easily dealt with, so long as you have enough ammo. In the latter stages of the game, we are allocated various Frankenstein-inspired enemies, who have their own respective weaknesses. As we begin to explore sections of the village in the early stages of the game, we run into this creepy old lady who confirms the worst.
It's you? The child's father. She is in great danger. Since Mother Miranda brought her to the village, we have fallen into darkness.
In his quest to find Rose, now with even more urgency, Ethan finds himself being dragged along the floor once more, and it is at this stage in the game that we are introduced to the main antagonist, Mother Miranda. She is accompanied by her 4 lords, who each have their own designated base on the outskirts of the village, and as the player, we are expected to visit each area in order to progress the story. The first section to clear is Castle Dimitrescu. Based on a real-world castle located in Transylvania, the game's version is near identical in some areas. The title's most notable character awaits inside, for vampire fans and internet perverts alike. Her name is Lady Dimitrescu. Despite her popularity, she poses very little threat when navigating the grounds of the castle, and is certainly not as chilling as that of Tyrant from Resident Evil 2. Dimitrescu is accompanied by her 3 daughters, who prove to be a nuisance whilst looking to escape the castle. Once all 3 have been destroyed, the lady of the castle then transforms into her final form. Whilst it was not the boss encounter I expected, the battle plays out well on the rooftops of the famous village castle. The second noble house to enter is the estate of the Dollmaker. It is here where the horror elements of Village are truly elevated. It is also where puzzles play a larger part in the game. The dimly lit corridors, combined with erratic knocks and bangs, leaves the player on the edge of their seat, especially once we find ourselves robbed of our entire inventory, with only torchlight for company. The psychological themes contribute towards the scariest moment in the entire story, and a worthy contender for the most horrifying moment in any Resident Evil game. Having finally escaped the jaws of the grotesque baby monster, the nightmares continue. Surrounded by an entire floor full of dolls, Ethan is required to search for Angie and destroy her.
Stupid idiot! What are you doing to my cute friends?
Resident Evil Village sees the return of a merchant-type character, and in this instance it is our very own Tubby Trader. Inspired from Resident Evil 4, the Duke as he is known sells you first aid, weapons, ammunition and craft recipes. You can also sell the items you no longer need for some sweet cash. Because the game is set in Romania, the currency is in lei. Weapons can be upgraded with the Duke too, and as you progress through the campaign, your arsenal will grow more powerful and efficient. Inventory can also be expanded to carry more items. Jewels and crystals can be sold for large amounts, as can several discoverable items, some of which need assembling first to gain maximum value. You can also supply the merchant with different types of meat, where he will create a dish that has significant benefits for your playthrough. There is a decent variety of weaponry in the latest installment of the Resident Evil series, some of which prove to be most effective in specific situations. But for the most part, I found myself using the handgun, shotgun and sniper rifle with regularity. The Magnum and grenade launcher became very helpful when dealing with the larger enemies for my playthrough. Ammo for these weapons is more scarce and understandably so reserve your limited supplies for the right moment. Combat is fluid, and is almost identical to that of the Resident Evil 4 remake. The most fun I had with the combat system was towards the end of the game, when we were able to play as Chris Redfield. Armed with plenty of ammo and night vision, it was a complete blast nailing enemies of all sizes, with fully automatic weapons and plenty of grenades. It was short-lived but memorable all the same. The third lord we encounter is Moreau, a twisted monster who lives in the reservoir beyond the windmills. This section was my least favourite in the game. It was fairly short, and lacked any real form of terror. You feel sorry for the character instead, before he mutates into an inflated mixture of flesh and acid. Now armed with plenty of heavy weaponry, Moreau was fairly easy to dispatch, therefore allowing us to proceed to the fourth and final lord. Heisenberg is a beloved character that deserved much more screen time, but what we did get was awesome. And whilst it wasn't Walter White reincarnated, his factory brings with it new and threatening enemies, narrow hallways and multiple levels that need navigating before reaching Mother Miranda. But before we do, things get a little nuts, albeit a complete blast as Chris Redfield hands over a modified personal tank. Armed with a chainsaw, machine gun and cannon, we proceed to battle against Heisenberg's final form. It is after eliminating Heisenberg that we meet back up with Mother Miranda, where she provides answers to many questions we had early on. She explains that Rose is the complete successor of Evelyn from Biohazard, hence why Miranda wishes to keep her for own gain. We also find out how Ethan is able to recover from heavy damage, and is able to live after having his heart ripped from his chest. This is because Ethan Winters died back in Resident Evil 7, but was kept alive by his strong connection to Evelyn and the mold, and was therefore able to regenerate himself. Before our final battle with Miranda, we learn that Mia is still alive, and was in fact not murdered by Chris Redfield. It was simply an illusion. Ethan then proceeds to rescue Rose, but in his last heroic effort, he stays behind at the village as he is no longer able to continue. We then get a little tease as to where the story will be heading next.
This is a bioweapon.
What the hell were they thinking?
Orders, Captain.
Pick up the rest of the squad. Plot a course for BSAA Europe HQ. Someone's gotta pay.
Despite being skeptical of the DLC, Shadows of Rose was pleasantly surprising. The length was satisfactory and gives enough time for the story of Rose to develop. Having entered another realm to remove her powers, Rose is armed with very little in the way of weaponry, but instead is able to harness her powers to defeat new enemies. We revisit familiar sections of the game including the castle and the dollhouse, as we are guided by a spirit-like character which turns out to be Ethan. The pair finally get to meet, and Rose is forced to destroy Evelyn before proceeding to defeat Miranda for herself. Having acquired the crystal needed to remove her powers, Rose decides to keep them. After destroying Miranda, Ethan is left behind and the Winters story is nicely wrapped up. You will have noticed that all of my footage for this video was recorded in the third-person view mode, which is included as part of the Gold Edition for Resident Evil Village. Having played the majority of Resident Evil games in third person, it made sense to carry on in the same manner. I suspect the wide angle of third person may lessen the high tension moments because of the limited field of view, and I guess this is why the Mercenaries mode really didn't gel with me. Going straight from third to first person seemed totally unnatural, and it is questionable as to why third person wasn't possible for this game mode. With the recent release of the Resident Evil 4 remake iteration, third person is just so much more suitable for this fast-paced gameplay. For the most part, the transitioning in and out of third person at the end of cutscenes was adequate, although I did find it a little jarring at first. I really did enjoy Resident Evil Village, and having never played Biohazard, I was still able to grasp the backstory of Ethan and Mia Winters, which is testament to the storytelling. The narrative differs largely from the Raccoon City games, so much so that this could have easily been a game set outside of the Resident Evil universe. However, there has been an effort to tie all of the stories together, which now begs the most important question of them all. Just what can we expect from Resident Evil 9, and the subsequent titles going forward? I would personally like to play as Chris Redfield for an entire game with a new engine, but for now, I feel as if the Winters story can be laid to rest. There were many moments in the game which supplied serious Silent Hill vibes, and I appreciate that atmosphere a lot. It was so well suited to the village. There were moments which felt as if they were cut a little short, such as the Dimitrescu castle, but overall the game was a satisfactory length and an undoubted solid effort. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. If you want to see more videos like this, consider clicking on the subscribe button, and drop a comment down below if you too have played Resident Evil Village.